to talk about last night's
Jay Crawford
debacle in South Beach. By far their worst loss of the season. It was the return of Evan Mobley, and even with him back in the lineup, there's not a single positive to take from that game.
No.
Watching it, G, I'll let you start here.
Wait, for G went off, didn't he?
G went off at like 4 a.m. He fired
Yeah,
off at 6,
I was in the
take it away.
group
It's all
chat
you.
too. It was just nasty work. It was just.
What was it, a 40-point loss?
They was
37
down by,
was the final deficit.
They was down by almost 50. And it was literally a 50-piece nugget. For me, it's tough because I think that, and I hate to keep going back to this, but we've seen championship organizations. And one of the reasons why people a lot of times say, LeBron held us hostage, or LeBron wouldn't do this, or LeBron was being cryptic, no, what LeBron was doing is holding you accountable. It's a lot of pressure playing with LeBron because he always wants you to make a move. He's the first one in. He's the last one out. He's the most conditioned. He's getting shots up. He's taking care of his body. He's gonna say, hey, listen, we're gonna get some conditioning in. We all on the Versa climbers. We all getting it in. And so what he does is he puts pressure on you to always be trying to live up to a championship legacy and standard. And I know it's hard. I get it. It is very difficult as a player to every single day give the effort, the attention to detail, and to pay the price daily in order to be a champion. Everybody say they want to be a champion, but there's only realistically about 10 to 15% of the people that's putting in that work at the top down, from the top of the organization to the bottom. Is your owner willing to spend? Is he willing to go into luxury tax? Do you have a coach that's willing to make people uncomfortable and willing to be able to innovate and do things? Do you have a superstar that is going to hold everybody accountable? Do you have a secondary or third guy that understands, I got to compromise, I got to give something to win a championship? And everybody say they want to go to heaven, but don't nobody want to die.
Or live right.
Right? I'd had my 20 years here. I know I was a jerk for 45 years, but hey, let me get in the gates real quick. That ain't the way it worked. And when I'm watching the Cavs, they haven't paid the price. The coach has not paid the price and said, look, at some point in time, I got to go from these guys liking me to these guys understanding that I'm driving them to do certain things. The play, in terms of what is your identity? Do you have a set way of playing that everybody, 1 through 10, understands? Do you have the buy-in? Are you willing to get in their face? Are you willing to take minutes away? All these things. But when I hear, the most disappointing part is I hear him say, well, it's just one of those things where, guys are out and, these guys are, this is a typical of them. This is what they usually put out. It was just one of those games. When you start saying that, when you start implementing that, it gives people the opportunity to always fall back on the easy way out. And the easy way out is saying that you're injured, and the easy way out is saying that you're going to get it better, and the easy way out is making excuses and saying Donovan Mitchell, and when we get back, he'll be. No, because you weren't doing what you were supposed to when everybody was there. So my thing is, to me, they have not set up a championship organization as far as their mindset, and it's very evident to see that in the way that the Heat play and the way we play.
I can tell you this, man. Last night was a horrible ass loss. I know this
was it the worst of the season, do you think?
Oh,
absolutely. There's no
too.
Excuses to that. To me, this team looked disinterested. They looked disengaged. They didn't come out playing with any energy at all. And anytime all those are factors, that falls directly on the shoulders of the head coach of this team. As the head coach, it's your job to make sure that your team is prepared to play, that they're focused, and that they come out and that they actually show an interest of being a part of the basketball game. To me, JG, it looked like they quit yesterday. The Cavs have now lost, 3 in a row. They're losers of 4 of their last 5, and they're 3-7 in their last 10 games.
They've won 7 in their last 18.
It's ridiculous. Here we are with 13 or less games to go in a regular season, and you have the Cavaliers playing the way that they're playing. Meanwhile, you have teams that has a pretty good head coach like Eric Spoelstra. They're starting to ramp it up. They're starting to get their stuff together.
They're looking at the calendar.
They're starting to tighten up as the regular season closes. and we're entering the playoffs. And this is a team that's just quite frankly going in the wrong direction at the absolute wrong time.
I think the biggest thing for me is I'm with you on the JB thing, and here's why. We have seen so many different variations of this Cavaliers team that to me it's as plain as writing on a wall what the best version of the Cavaliers team is. Now, last night I'm going to give them a little bit of pass because the Donovan Mitchell thing. Donovan Mitchell is clearly the son of the Cavaliers universe. It all goes around him. But what bothers me the most is that organizations are supposed to be able to watch in real time and assess situations that fans and media do. After January 1st, the Cavaliers were 17-1. They went on to win and lose the next two, so they were 18-2. Okay, so that is a quarter of the season. And there was something different about that quarter of the season than any other part of the year. They were without Mobley and Garland. And when you watched them play, we all agreed this is the best that the Cavaliers have ever looked for a 20-game stretch in the non-LeBron James era. In fact, if you do the math, they set records and broke records that LeBron's teams had set.
Facts.
And now everybody wants to say, well, weak schedule. Look who they're losing to now. They're losing to teams that they were beating that everybody said was a weak schedule before.
Or teams without their stars, teams without Jalen Brunson. Miami is missing, what's his name?
They didn't have Tyler Hero or Duncan
And
Robinson.
they're about a 10 game over 500 team, 8 to 10 games over 500.
They don't take the regular season seriously.
I know they don't. They've kind of figured it out. Here's a sad reality, guys. The Cavaliers are currently 3.5 games from being in a play-in situation. A play-in situation. That got on us real quick. And here's the other thing to that. Mitchell's going to be out how many more games?
He gets reevaluated tomorrow.
Yeah.
That does not mean he's coming back Thursday.
Sure.
It doesn't mean Wednesday. They're going to reevaluate. He's still dealing with the broken nose. He's still dealing with the knee issues. I suggested letting him rest another 2 weeks because you need him to be 100% healthy for the playoffs or you have no chance whatsoever regardless of what seed.
Even considering the fact that they're 3.5 games from being in a play-in situation.
They have a better chance coming out through the play-in with 100% Donovan Mitchell than being a 5 or 6 seed or even a 3 seed with 70%.
Here's the problem. I would agree with that statement on its surface. Here's what scares me to death. The Cavs end up slipping to the 5 and the Knicks end up in the 4.
Yeah.
That's
an
an
hellhole.
I mean,
that is a flat L. Last year it was the other way around. The Cavs were the 4, the Knicks were the 5. So to my original point, and then I'll let you go, we've watched different pieces and parts of this team. And the Cavaliers weren't just winning when they were going 18-2. They were boat racing teams by 30.
It was put it on Cavs.
They had the biggest point differential for a 20-game stretch in modern NBA history.
Yeah, it's top 5 since the 1970 season. So the last 53 seasons.
Think about that.
And
So this isn't just the best version of a Cavaliers team. This, by some statistic measures, was one of the best stretches of basketball that NBA teams have played in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And here's what's happened. And I said it at the time. You guys knew I was going to come back to this. It was crazy when I said it. A lot of people still think it's crazy today. All I said was, and this was before the trade deadline, it's not hard to figure out which Cavalier team, which pieces and parts works the best. I said Mobley and Garland, or one or the other, should be moved for parts. Now, I understand the Garland contract is difficult, it's cumbersome, and it's a problem. But this much I know. If I put the 3 players in vacuums by themselves, I can picture a Donovan Mitchell-led team winning a championship.
I could too.
I cannot picture an Evan Mobley-led team winning a championship, and I cannot picture a Darius Garland-led team winning a championship.
Well, here's the thing. The Cavs are what? 10-12 this year when Donovan Mitchell doesn't play.
Exactly.
So it's safe to say for all of us,
He's the guy.
He's the guy. I don't think any of us on this panel trust the Cavaliers without a healthy Donovan Mitchell.
Without
at
him,
all.
they're just a middling team.
This is where I'm starting to become confused because I've said on this panel and I've said some things about Darius Garland that I've gotten backlash for. And I
don't know why he's so untouchable.
But this is what I stand on. He is showing me that he's consistently inconsistent. This dude, the last 3 games, right, has shot 27.3% from 3-point range, 6-22, including 0-6 2 games ago and 1-4 last night. Now, over the last 10 games, he's averaging 19.6 assists. It's not bad, but it's not good enough for a max player or a player with his potential. So here's where I'm starting to become confused, because I've said some things about Darius Garland. I've said some things about Evan Mobley when it comes to their consistency, right? I don't know if it's them or if we have a head coach and a coaching staff that's not developing these guys and is not getting the most out of these two players.
I don't know the answer to that either.
And so it's really hard to say, because a lot of fans, they can see Darius Garland's potential even through the BS that's going on right now. And so now I'm starting to question, okay, is it Darius Garland? Is it Evan Mobley? Or is it JB Bickerstaff and his coaching staff that's not being able to develop these young, talented players?
Let me ask you this question, because I've come to the conclusion that Darius Garland is so similar to the player that Donovan Mitchell is, clearly not as good. And by the way, it makes it sound like I think Darius Garland's trash. I don't. I just don't think he's right for this team right now. So here's what I would ask you. Would you agree with this fact that Garland is a lesser version of Donovan Mitchell with a very similar skill set? Not as athletic or explosive, but they do a lot of the same things. They're handling the ball a lot. They're shooters. I think Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are also the same thing. I think they're interchangeable.
Right.
To me, if you're playing poker and you have too many of one card, it can be a bad thing if you're going for a royal flush. It can be a great thing if you're going for a 4 of a kind. But if you end up with a 3 of a kind, you're not winning much with the 3 of a kind.
No.
And I think that's the analogy I would use here. They've got a lot of similar parts in their hand. What I want is a complete hand. I want the royal flush. So before the deadline, my suggestion was you go to Donovan Mitchell and say, we're all in on you. We want you to sign an extension. If we can get you to agree to an extension, we're going to make some moves that are going to strengthen your opportunity to win a championship in this city. And that means dealing some key parts. But what if that conversation happened and it didn't become public, then at least the Cavs did their due diligence. I don't think it ever happened. I think that they are stubbornly holding on to Mobley and Garland, thinking that that will be their ace in the hole if Garland walks out of town. Or, if Mitchell walks out of town. But if Mitchell walks out of town, it doesn't matter. This team is not winning a championship without him.
At all, at zero. I look at Darius Garland, and we just got to be clear. We've seen championship teams before. Sometimes you can fool yourself into thinking just because it's the best you've had in a couple years that means it's going to be good enough to get it done. No, it's just not. It's not. Go back and watch. Remember when the Cavs played the Warriors? Do you remember how hard they had to claw and fight for every inch? Like, it took a game where LeBron and Kyrie on the road had 40. Let's not fool ourselves here. Darius Garland is not getting 40 on the road in a game in a 7-game series against one of the best teams of all time. That's what it takes sometimes. Sometimes it takes Channing Frye hitting like 9 or 10 threes in a game against Toronto. And then go back and look at the teams that the Cavs used to play, right? The Raptors. Really good team. Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan.
Those battles.
Ibaka.
Boston. A number of times.
Remember how they used to just come up short against the Cavs and they couldn't do nothing with us in certain times because LeBron was just like, no, we're going to make sure we get a stop. We're going to make sure we hit a shot. Or Kyrie says, no, I got it this time. Or Kevin Love hits timely 3-point shots. We watching a team right now that is losing to teams without their best players. And how Ty Lue used to say, look, hey, Kev, I love you to death, but you got to come off the bench.
Right.
That's Kevin. At the time, it was Kevin Love. Like, that's big-time Kevin Love. He said, I love you, got to come off the bench. They won't even do that to Evan Mobley, who ain't proved nothing. He gets 15 points a game. He'd have had to come off the bench or something, especially you got two pieces. That's the same, Jay. They won't even do that.
That's what's bothering me. They've got a lot of the same when they could have role players, because we know to win a championship, you've got to have every role filled. Not with good players, not even with above average players.
Right.
They've got to be elite. And all these role players have to be elite players. I think in this particular instance, Garland would make a great off-the-bench replacement to Mitchell when Mitchell gets his breathers. I do not want him in the game at the end. Guys, he's a liability at the end of the game.
These turnovers.
And I've been saying that with turnovers. One game, he didn't even get off a shot.
Yeah.
It's just,
Scary.
I don't know what happens, but sometimes when
He shot the ball 9 times last night.
and that almost
He had
seems
9 points, bro.
Well, he got benched in the third quarter, never came back in.
deservedly
And
so.
deservedly, they benched all the starters.
You have points you want to make. What are they?
Yeah, I just want to say this. I actually think, in a weird roundabout way, that 18-2 stretch was the worst thing that ever happened to the Cavs this season. And one thing we forget in that stretch is both Mobley and Garland went 8-1 in that stretch. That wasn't totally without them.
Right.
And that 18-2 stretch raised expectations and an idea that this style of play was sustainable, which in some respects it is. But it was sustainable because Donovan Mitchell was playing the best basketball of his 8-year career, and Jared Allen also.
But don't you
was
ever
playing to
ask the
best.
question why?
Well, I'm getting that. There is some things about the schedule that certainly helped. There are some things about coaching decision that fell into JB's lap. Sam Merrill was an unknown. He was on fire from three, unstoppable. George Niang, Isaac Okoro was shooting his best stretch. They fell into that. 18-2, you take that out of their record, they're a 500 team. They're exactly
I know they
25-25 without that 20-game stretch. I think that 18-2 stretch raised expectations to a point where we thought this team was probably better and had a higher ceiling than it ever realistically had.
I know, but
and now trying to come back and look at, okay, why can't they reach that ceiling again? Well, obviously Mitchell's hurt, so that takes a huge chunk out of it. But it was unrealistic to ever think that Donovan and Jarrett could play at that level.
But let
for
me
a
ask you
sustained
a question,
period.
Mike.
And real quick before you ask the question, Darius has not been good enough. Like point blank period,
No.
he has not been good enough. Mobley, we expected to take a massive step in year 3. He's gotten a little better, but he hasn't taken
Marginally.
that massive step that we'd expected.
No.
And the two big lineup doesn't work. Like
We've seen
at
it.
the end of the day, it doesn't work.
It does not
There
work.
are other reasons to why they have looked so poor in the second half other than just injuries, because every team in the NBA deals with injuries. They're not the only
They do.
team. And
You're
every
right.
team's in a weird 14, 15-game stretch where they're not getting rest days and they're playing back-to-backs. And by the way, the Cavs' first back-to-back in 2 weeks is tonight. They're home
Good
against
luck with
Charlotte,
that.
so we can't even use they're playing 4 or 5 back-to-backs.
No.
But the reality of that 18-game stretch was Donovan Mitchell was playing the best basketball of his entire
But Mike,
career.
I get that. You're right, and I don't deny that at all. But I always want to know, well, why? Well, why? Like when a hitter's got a 26-game hitting streak, I want to know
What's going on?
well,
What's happening?
What's different? Now I understand. Sometimes the ball looks like a beach ball. Sometimes it looks like a BB.
I think the whole
I
team
get
was
that.
seen as a beach ball. The whole team was
Right,
making
but here's my point.
unrealistic amount of threes. That's sustainable. That was the outlier.
Sometimes, like in baseball, a guy's hitting 260 in the 5 spot, and the manager makes a crazy decision to put him in the 2 spot. Okay? Because everything in baseball feeds off what happens before you in a batting lineup.
Yeah, you need people on base.
Yeah, you need people
that's
on
why
base.
Jose's
You
numbers
can
were
take
down a
pressure
little bit.
off a guy by dropping him down in the lineup.
Absolutely.
You can also help a guy by putting him in front of a guy that gets on base a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to see more strikes. If it's a guy that dives at pitches that are out of the zone, he's going to benefit by having a guy in front of him that's on base a lot. The pitcher doesn't have the luxury of walking him. He's going to see strikes. So what I'm saying is I've seen instances in baseball where you've taken a 260 hitter in the 5 spot and you irrationally throw him in the 2 and he hits 330. Well, in the grand scheme of things, 270 and 330 is a massive jump in baseball, right? Massive.
Yes.
You're like, oh my God, a 270 hitter? I don't think much of him. A 330 hitter is an all-star and maybe a Hall of Famer if he can do that for 15 years. But if you think about it, it's only 6 percentage points. 60 on the 1,000 scale. So imagine if a shooter's shooting 27% and then shooting 33%.
That's Sam Merrill.
That's Sam Merrill. Now, why? Maybe it's because the players he's sharing the floor with. It impacts every touch in a basketball game. One of the stats that our boy Fanta said that knocked me off my seat, and I can't remember the exact numbers now.
Jared Allen got 40 touches more per game.
Per game!
Yeah, which is, by the way, the two big lineup. I don't. It can't work.
It can't work. We've seen that.
And I'm not arguing that.
But
I'm
they
just
haven't
saying-
come to that conclusion yet, Mike.
They keep
No, I
doing
know.
it.
And that what's
I'm not
astonishing to
defending
me.
JB here. Like, trust me, this is not a defensive JB.
I
I'm
understand.
just giving a little
But there's
context
also
to that
other people in
20-game
the organization, Mike, that can look at that, Kobe,
Yeah.
and say, this isn't working.
But
But Kobe decided to
40 more touches per game. That's one of the most astonishing stats I have ever heard. He was basically the invisible man when he was playing with Mobley. And then Mobley goes out and he gets 40 more touches per game, and the whole thing explodes, 18-2.
He played the best stretch of Jared
And
Allen's
so-
entire career in that 20
No
games.
question. So my thing is, sometimes in baseball, you're looking at the player. This is the same guy that was hitting in the 5-hole. Hitting 270. Now he's hitting 330. Why? We
McNuggets.
moved him in the lineup. So little tweaks like that, every single possession and every player on the floor are either benefactors or they're victims of the players around them. And what we learned was, by accident, was that's the Rubik's Cube formula. That's it.
And you look at it and you put that in context with, those bigs not really working with each other. And then you take in contrast and compare Donovan Mitchell with Darius Garland. They are similar players, but more when you look at Donovan Mitchell, he's much more sudden when he makes a decision.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mentioned the explosiveness.
He's either going to go to the rack, and if he's going to go with intention of finishing, or he's going to kick because guys
and there's no
collapse.
pause.
And there's no
Yeah.
and then when guys get it, they can swing. You get the hockey assist, and now all of a sudden the ball's moving. They also push the pace a lot more with Donovan Mitchell. Look out to get out and open and transition. And the thing with Darius Garland is, it may not seem like it, but you know McNuggets, when you're doing one-on-one drills, what do they tell you? When you're doing continuous one-on-one, you get 3 dribbles to get a shot. If you ain't got, if it take you more than 3 dribbles to get a shot,
Find
somebody else. The ball got to move.
Kick it, yeah.
Darius Garland, it doesn't seem like a lot, but those extra 2 to 3 seconds in the paint where you're dribbling and probing, that stagnates everything. Now, when you try to swing and kick, it's a difference between somebody like Sam Merrill being wide open or Sam Merrill with somebody in his face. Isaac Okoro being open in the corner, wide open.
And that's how everybody plays better.
And that's how people get better. And I don't know why JB is not. And another thing, too, this is crazy. The variation of Darius Garland's game is different. My dad called me. He said, hey, remember when Darius Garland used to have that little floater in the lane? What happened to that?
He's scared of contact right now.
Why?
He ain't even see that floater.
I've been saying this for a while. Who
Ain't seen
knows?
it.
He lost 10 pounds when he broke his jaw earlier.
Right.
I just think he's scared of getting hit in the paint,
Too frail.
getting hurt again.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Possible.
that's just my opinion. I have no
That-
idea. If
I think
real,
that's
but
a very well-founded opinion.
That floater is
that makes sense.
it keeps people honest. You don't know if it's a lob to Allen. You don't know if he's going. You give yourself a whole nother option, and that was a big part of his game. And I said, you know what,
and
Dad?
G, if he's not getting to the paint, he's relying on his 3-point shot, and he's an undersized point guard going against lanky defenders, especially without Donovan on the court, because their best primary perimeter defenders guarding Darius, which then leads to bad 3-point shots. He gets frustrated. It's a whole spiral, which all comes back to this, and Earl, you chime in. Without Donovan, this team has no chance. Which is why I'm willing to let him rest until he's 100%.
I think for me, I go back to the first time we played Minnesota. I think it was the game that we played Minnesota here at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. I thought that was Darius Garland's overall best game this season. The way that he asserted himself.
Is that the game that won in overtime?
I think so.
Yes.
The game that
you know what? I agree with that. But at the end of the game, he had a chance to win it and didn't get a shot off.
But to me, this is why I feel like that. He asserted himself as a dominant on-ball guard, right? He was facilitating.
Right.
But not only that, he seemed like he was making the right decision every single time, or he was actually getting to the paint. And then when he was getting to the paint, he was making quick decisions on, should I lob this up to Jared Allen? Should I use the floater? He was pulling Rudy Gobert out and making him confused on what it was he was doing. You seen the confidence in his own ability put on full display in that one game. And then, he gets back to being inconsistent Darius Garland over and over. And so, to me, it doesn't always show up in a box score. It's not always about the stats. It's about how he looks when he's out there on that court with his decision-making, his own confidence in his own game, etc. And I just think the dude needs to become more consistent than what he's been. We got 13 games left. I don't know if he's going to get it together or not before the playoffs start. I just know this team needs Donovan Mitchell back fast.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because I don't think they have a chance without him. Long term, I think this year, I have them, if Mitchell comes back, they're going to win one series at most. They will not advance to the finals, not a chance. At least if they continue thinking that they can get by with two bigs and Garland and Mitchell on the floor for most of the minutes together. I think they, at best, win one series. And right now, the way they're playing, and depending on their first series matchup and where they slot, we could have the exact same performance as last year, one and done.
Yeah, it could be tough. Right now, they'd play Indiana in the 3-6 matchup, but like we alluded to before, they are just half a game up above New York for the 4 spot and literally 4.5 games ahead of a play-in spot. So there's a lot to sort out.
I thought it was 3.5. Aren't they 14.5 out and 17 out is the play-in spot?
I was looking at where they were. Yeah, I guess technically 3.5, but it's...
I mean, can you imagine that?
Guys, it's 4 games.
Here's the other thing, too, that tells me that there's a major ceiling on where they can go this year. To me, I always ask the question, what is this team? What are the Browns during their season?
Right.
What are the Cavs this year? And to answer that question, you have to first ask 2 other questions. What is their ceiling?
Yeah.
And what is their floor? And for the teams that win the championship, it's usually a space like this.
Yeah.
For the Bostons, for the LeBron-led teams when he was here, they were either going to win it or they were going to lose in the conference finals.
Yeah.
And that was the floor and that was the ceiling. But for this team, consider this. We have mentioned JB as a coach of the year, and we have also said at times he's got to go. So that floor and ceiling is like this. And then when you look at the Cavs, 17-1, 7-11. And it'd be one thing if during the 17-1 they had no injuries. They had 2 of their top 3 or 4 players out. 17-1. That's their ceiling. 18-2. That's how good they could be. Over the last 18 games, some of which Donovan Mitchell has played, they're 7-11. So their floor and ceiling is like this. So I say their ceiling could be, if they figure it out like the 18-1, an NBA championship. But their floor could also be getting bounced in the first round of the playoffs.
We also,
and you can't win it that way.
Absolutely.
I look at it like this a little bit, man. Again, Jared Allen was somebody they traded for. Donovan Mitchell was somebody they traded for. Karis LeVert, somebody they traded for. Again, most of the Cavs' best players are guys that they've traded for. And the guys that they have chosen, Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, Isaac Okoro, these are lottery picks. And if you want to win a championship, your lottery picks have to turn into top 10 guys. Like, look at Pablo Banchero, right? Banchero is better than Mobley, right?
No, it's not even a question. Yeah.
And they just drafted him a couple years ago, right? You get guys
draft after Mobley,
right? So I mean, you can't.
Yeah, you're right. You got to develop. You got to draft well. You've got to develop well, and you have to fill in the blanks with free agency and trades.
It's just funny, man. We're at the end of this regular season, and I go back to last offseason, and we thought that we would see some significant changes with the Cavaliers. But if you think about it, they really ran it back with the same core for the same head coach,
Yep.
And they were expecting a different result. I think Kobe Altman looked at this thing like, if I keep everything in place and add some pieces around it,
51.
that this team will be better next year with just another year of growth and maturity.
Yeah.
We heard Jason Lloyd speak to that point all the time, and I think we're realizing as we close this season out, that we're trying to fit a square into a round circle. Right? The pieces that we have, as much as we want everything to mesh and to fit together, meaning from the head coach and to the players that we consider the core for this team, the reality is it just don't. And until we make a move, we're going to be in this same situation year in and year out.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. All right, Mike.